Hey everybody, and welcome to Breaking Biotech, the podcast where we get into all things biotechnology. My name is Matt, and thanks a lot for joining me. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. And if you know anybody who's trying to get into the space, link them to my channel if they want to dip their toes into the biotechnology industry. So today I'm going to talk about one sad thing, which was my incorrect call in Zogenix. So I want to congratulate everybody who actually played it and went long and got rewarded handsomely for it. I also want to talk about the latest FDA guidelines regarding gene therapy and talk a little bit how it relates to Spark and whether or not it's going to have some implications. So let's jump into it. All right, so I have the chart for Zogenix up, and today it closed at 61.35, reached a high of about 63. And so I said in my last video that this news was priced in and that it had a lot of downside potential and that it was not worth playing. I was clearly incorrect, and this is a good lesson for everybody, myself included. I'm disappointed that I didn't see the upside here, but I gotta say, you can never always be right on a call that you make. So it's important that if you don't feel like you have conviction in something, that you just don't play it, and that's what I did here. And I in the last video, I went on this long spiel about how you can try to anticipate events that are already priced in, and it looked like that to me here, and I was incorrect. And there's rumors that are circulating that this sets up the company for a good position for a buyout. And that could be the case, or it could just be that this market is so large that between Zogenix and GW Pharmaceuticals is going to be a ton of money there to be made. So either way, it's great for both companies. They're both going to be competing now for that market, and it's great for everybody who has Dravet syndrome who now have options. So just to go through the data that they did announce today, I'll just go down. So they showed that. So I'll give some background. So Zogenix did two trials. They did one trial later last year that was patients who were not taking any other pharmaceutical drugs to control their seizures. So then they split the patients into placebo and ZX008, and they saw a significant decrease in the number of seizures by the drug. So what they wanted to do in study 2 was see whether or not patients that were taking pharmaceutical drugs to treat their Dravet syndrome, who then also added ZX008, would also get that benefit. And what they saw was patients with over 50% reduction in monthly convulsive seizures also saw a 50% decrease when they were taking ZX008 compared to placebo. So this is great data. It's in line with what they saw in study 1. So there's definitely an additive effect of ZX001 as well as stiripitol, pentol, and so this is positive. This is data that I think most people were expecting, but it led to a big increase in the stock. So congratulations to everybody who played it. And these guys are going to be filing for to register the drug with the FDA at the end of the year, and both this company and GW Pharmaceuticals will be going head to head. So thought I'd bring that up, and so for people who are not completely convinced of your position, you don't have to play everything. It's impossible for you to always get everything right. So anything that you don't have pretty good conviction on, I would say just don't play it. There's always tons of opportunities out there, especially in the biotech space in this day and age. So there's no reason for you to play something that you don't feel very confident in. So with that, I also want to mention, or we're going to move on to the FDA guidelines. So I posted or I retweeted the FDA tweet about the new guidelines that they had for some of the different diseases that were out there. So one of them was the human gene therapy for hemophilia, and this of course has a lot of implication for any of the companies that are in hemophilia, and I talked about a few of them last time. I got some flack for not bringing up BioMarin at all, which just wasn't really on my radar. But they're also in the hemophilia space, and they're an important player. But so some of the things that caught mine and other people's eyes. The main thing in this document that I've noticed is that they want companies to be careful with the discrepancy that they see between two different analytic methods to measure the factor activity. So there's these factor 8 or factor 9 activity assays, and based on which assay you use, sometimes the data that comes out can be a little different. So they want companies to settle that if they're going to focus on that for their endpoint. So the important thing that people have been looking at is here. So for efficacy endpoints, companies that are going through the traditional approval, they're using this. They want companies to use the annualized bleeding rate as the primary endpoint to demonstrate clinical benefit. And then they say for the accelerated approval, of which Spark has requested, I guess, they say that factor activity may be considered as a surrogate endpoint for primary efficacy assessment under the accelerated approval pathway. And then they go on to say that to support this use, you have to resolve the discrepancies in the factor assay results, and you have to determine the target factor activity level within the range of factor activity of normal population. So this is a bit concerning because expression level is very difficult to control when you're doing gene therapy in these studies. So you have a promoter in your vector that's going to control the amount of expression of a given gene, but once it's actually in the cells and starting to work, there's a time course for a lot of this stuff, and sometimes it doesn't always work like you hope. So for companies who are going under the accelerated approval and the ones who are relying on only factor activity, they need to be careful and make sure that they're within the range of normal population. So some people are concerned for Spark for this reason, but they say here that factor activity may be considered as a surrogate endpoint. So in all of Spark's studies so far for hemophilia, they've shown both the annualized bleeding rate as well as factor activity. So this doesn't concern me too much, as the outcome is what's more important than the actual expression, and as well as safety concerns. So if you have too much factor activity, it could be a clotting problem, and you could be put at higher risk for stroke or heart attack or something like that. But if it's too low, you're just going to get more bleeding, and your drug's going to be ineffective. So let's see here. Okay, so the two studies that Spark is doing for hemophilia is SPK 9001 for hemophilia B, SPK 8011 for hemophilia A. And so we're expecting, actually, if we look down here in Q3 of 2018, we're expecting a clinical update for the hemophilia A. And between these two, the hemophilia A expression data is really all over the place. So this is what they showed last time. And so you can see how the amount of factor 8 activity expression, it's like all over the place. So this is not very encouraging if this is the only data that they were to show for hemophilia A. But given that they're showing other stuff, let me pull it up here. Okay, so this is SPK 8011. Given that for these 4 patients, they haven't seen any, or they've seen very few post bleeds after the infusion, I think this is what the FDA is going to be more curious about, especially when it comes to phase 1-2 data. In phase 3, they might have a stricter criteria, but I don't think this is going to be a big hindrance from them moving on to the next phase. If you look at the phase 2, or the hemophilia B for SPK 9001, we can see the factor 9 activity is a lot higher. I should also mention, actually, that there's only 4 patients for this hemophilia A project, and the the amount of activity they actually get, the mean is something like 15 or like 10, something like that. So it's not huge, and you're considered hemophilic if you're sub 1%. So they're obviously getting some more, like they're increasing their amount of factor activity by tenfold. So that's definitely good, but I think the normal population can be as high as like 50. So it's not quite up to normal levels, but if the outcome is no bleeds, then I think they're doing their job. So this is it's kind of uncharted territory for this when it comes to like deciding whether or not a drug is good enough to be approved. I would personally be more concerned of overexpression of this, where you're actually at risk of a clot. But the FDA does want drugs that are approved that are actually going to be effective for patients. So I also see their argument for being concerned with this. So when it comes to hemophilia B, however, their average factor activity is a lot higher. It's in like the 30 to 40% range. So it's more encouraging if this is the only thing that they were to show. Now, with this as well, if we look here, the annualized bleed rate, it's down to like 0 after they do the infusion, after they do the vector infusion. So I think this is what's most important, and I don't think that these guidelines put Spark in any serious danger. And now the space is kind of crowded. There's going to be other companies that have similar gene therapy treatments out there, so that might be a thing. But in terms of safety and approval, I think that it's not going to be too concerned at this point. So for Spark, we're looking forward to this SPK 8011 clinical update in Q3, and so I wanted to clarify that, and I think it's interesting for people to read these guidelines, because it gives you insight into what the FDA is looking for from these companies. So some of the stuff that I find funny is, as a regulatory body, they're the ones that control what gets to be sold in this country, and the bars it's high. It's just they're very demanding on the amount of data they have, and while I think it's good for safety, sometimes they can kind of overreach with the amount of stuff that they are demanding from people, and it's interesting to see that. But so everybody should go to the FDA website, and for any disease that you're particularly interested in, you should look at the guidelines and see what they're asking of drug companies to provide for that. Okay, so with that, gonna talk about just update on the portfolio. Okay, so overall we finished the week at 23, almost 24%. I'll just talk about the notable changes that went on. So Illumina had a big jump in these last couple days, and I almost just wish I bought Illumina and Madrigal, but sadly I did not. Gilead continues to recover from its lows, and Adamas also saw a bit of an increase, so that's been helping. And I tweeted earlier in the week that I actually took the plunge and bought some Bluebird. I did the video on Bluebird a little while ago, and wasn't sure if the bottom was in on this decline, but I bought in at around 175. So not a huge position, but I think that they're going to see a lot of success long term. So if we look at the XBI and SPX, everybody's done well this week, so that's good to see. Volatility continues to decline. The SPX is actually closed slightly above 2,800, which I personally think is relatively bullish, even though it's tried to break through that point for a while, a few times in the last couple months, and has been unsuccessful. So we'll see what's going to happen with the escalating trade wars and things that are going on with that. But other than that, I'm going to keep going. If anybody has any suggestions for companies they want me to look at, please let me know. I've kind of reached the end of the companies that I was directly hoping to look through. So somebody send me a comment. There was one person who commented something about another company involved in, I think it was CAR-T. I'll have to check, but I might do something on them just for fun. But yeah, with that, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and thanks a lot for watching, guys, and have a good weekend.